Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here with another Master Duel video for you guys. Today we're going to be covering yet another adventure deck. This is going to be another fairly highly requested adventure deck, as it is one that has seen, even recently, enough success in the TCG to warrant the banning of Prank-Kids and Meow-Meow-Mu in the TCG. Which is definitely a very dramatic hit to this deck, but here in Master Duel, we still have this card at 3, so we are going to be taking full advantage of Prank-Kids with the Adventure Engine. That is what we will be going over today. So, I have here my initial build for the deck that I've been fairly happy with. This deck, actually, among all the adventure decks that I've played thus far, which has been, you know, the ones you've seen on the channel, Phantom Knight, Tenyi, and now Prank-Kids, this is probably the one that kind of changed the least in the way that it plays now that it's got the adventure cards. Like, you know, with Phantom Knights especially, we saw the adventure engine being directly incorporated into the combo, and to a similar extent, we even saw that with, or not a similar, a somewhat similar extent, we saw that with being the case with Adventure Tenyi as well. Here with Adventure Prank-Kids, it really is just, you're still doing your same normal Prank-Kids lines. It's just sometimes you open Foolish or Water Enchantress or Rite, and then you can just set up an Omni-Negate before you combo, which is very, very nice. Prank-Kids, a lot like Tri-Brigade Zodiac in that it's got, and I guess to an extent like flowandereeze as well, in that it's got a lot of like quote-unquote one-card combos. As anyone who has played the deck knows, you really only need one Prank Kid in order to get your plays going. So, I think I'll still be linking my not older, I mean, it's like not even 2 months old at this point, I don't think, my combo guide for Prank-Kids in the description below, because again, we're really not changing our plays much here. Again, if you open Foolish, you can send the Water Enchantress, or if you open her, you can do the usual setup to get your adventure token with the Gryphon Rider and the Draco back, and then again you just summon the Prank Kid, and then you just do your normal Prank Kid stuff. So we'll of course be going over this line a little bit as well in the duels that we're gonna see here. So now there are still some things that are a little bit different about this build from the previous iteration, since we did have to incorporate, you know, 7 cards for the adventure engine. A few things had to get cut, mostly just like tech hand trap disruption type stuff, but a few like minor combo pieces, right? Like you might notice we're not playing Monster Reborn anymore, we're not playing Instant Fusion anymore. Those cards are very, very nice for Prank-Kids, and Prank-Kids can take advantage of those cards pretty well. Like Instant Fusion, you know, we can use, or could have used, I guess we're not playing anymore, so we can't use it anymore. It could be used to play around Ash Blossom as well as being an extender, but ultimately they're just not cards that are necessary to the deck. Same with like Prank-Kids Place and like Terraforming, right? Like we like being able to open Prank-Kids very consistently, but we don't necessarily need 3 Place and a Terraforming to do that. In fact, it was pretty rare that we relied on Prank-Kids Place to get our 1 Prank-Kids. Like usually it's not a problem for us to open with a Prank-Kids monster, so we're down to 1 copy of Prank-Kids Place. We're also playing, as you might notice, 3 Forbidden Droplet. I talked about this when I went over the Adventure Phantom Knight deck, right? Where Forbidden Droplet moving forward, I feel, is going to be a very, very powerful card against this format in general. You know, it's like I've said before too, we saw it with the Drytron formats of Seasons 1 through the beginning of Season 5. Again, especially the beginning of Season 5, those who remember that climb. The good old Drytron Hellfest. But in any case, yeah, so in formats where a lot of monsters that like have Omni-Negates are present, you'll definitely be seeing a lot more Forbidden Droplet. And of course, with the Adventure Engine and Wandering Gryphon Rider just about everywhere, that makes this a prime format for Droplet. This deck also is one that will often have the resources to use Droplet, because that is a factor to take into account when putting Droplet and how many copies of Droplet you're putting into your deck, because there are some decks that just don't have like spare resources, right? Kind of a good example of that was actually Sword Soul Tenyi last format, because you might be thinking, well, okay, Sword Soul Tenyi would put out board fulls of negates like Chi Shao and Baron, but Droplet didn't see much play in that format. I think the main reason being that, you know, once it's got to the end of its board, Sword Soul Tenyi didn't really have the extra spare resources to use with Droplet, right? Like you would have your Chi Shao and your Baron, and like maybe a Blackout, but then the rest of your hand might be like a Maxi and an Ash, or like, you know, it would be like still relevant disruption, not cards you want to just toss away with Droplet. So, and then with Sword Sultani being the dominant deck and not playing Droplet, it couldn't really use that to counter itself. There were still some decks out there that were playing Droplet to counter Sword Sultani, but they're kind of few and far between. But the thing with Adventure, and the other reason why I think you're seeing more Droplets now, this is just a little bit of interesting like kind of theory I have about the meta right now, because Adventure decks tend to slot in really well with decks that have like one or just minimal card combos, like Prank-Kids, like Tendies, like Phantom Knights. Those are the same kind of decks that will then, as a result, often have the extra resources to utilize with Droplets. So it's kind of a thing that's feeding into itself. It's almost like how Crossout Designator and some of the tech choices we play to play around Crossout Designator kind of feed into itself and perpetuate further use of Crossout, which you can see here we're using 3 copies of that card in this deck as well. The same thing is kind of happening here with Droplet, where again we're seeing these Adventure decks see popularity, or rather these decks using Adventure see popularity because they have low combo commitment requirements, and that then allows them to have the resources to use the Droplet as well. So forgive my tangent there. I just think that's a really interesting aspect of the meta that we're seeing right now, and it just I don't know, I'm always fascinated by how meta grows and develops, as you can tell with my metagame analysis, which I do actually want to get back to ASAP. But enough about that. We're here to talk about Adventure Prank-Kids specifically. So as far as the extra deck goes, I probably should be playing 2 Battle Butler. It's definitely not required, but the second Battle Butler is still a very, very nice resource to have. I'm not sure what I would drop at this point. You could get away with 2 Meow-Meow-Mu. 3 is really nice for the grind game, which is actually also where you want Battle Butlers. So I don't know that I would necessarily drop a Meow-Meow-Mu. The Link Spider is nice in order to go into Vert, which you don't even really go into that often in this deck. And you notice we're not playing DPE anymore. I knew there was one other major change I want to talk about, and that was it. We're not playing DPE anymore. It's not that it's bad in this particular build, and if you wanted to, you could go over 40 cards, or maybe, you know, cut like, let's see, you would have to cut 4 cards from the main deck. What would you cut? Like a Crossout, a Droplet, maybe you could cut an Imperm, you could maybe cut a Pandemonium, but I still really like having 2, maybe like a Maxx, and then you could just I don't know, you could find room in the extra deck, maybe take out like a Nightmare Unicorn or something. So yes, we could still be playing DPE in this build, but I think personally it's a little bit more important to have these, well, I think it's more important to have these like tech cards than the DPE right now, because it's not that the DPE doesn't add value to the deck, but it's the thing with Prank-Kids is that because of the way their combo lines work and the way that their restrictions work, you can really only continue the combo if you keep making Prank-Kids. If you go out of your way to make Vert and then DPE, well, then you're just kind of like done. I mean, of course, that's the case with any deck, but I guess what I'm saying is that it's harder because most of their decks will just tack DPE on to the end of their combo. It's a little bit more difficult for Prank-Kids to do that consistently. So that's another reason why I decided to just kind of omit DPE from this current build. Plus, I mean, that's also the trend we saw in TCG and OCG builds of the deck, and you know, those people who've built those decks have a lot more practice and research and time than I do. So that's kind of why I defer to some of the overarching opinions there. But of course, that doesn't mean we shouldn't challenge them and all that fun stuff. So. Alright, let's go ahead and run through the list card by card here, and then we'll take a look at some gameplay. So we are playing in this deck 3 Prank-Kids Fansies, 3 Maxx, 3 Prank-Kids Dropsies, 3 Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, 3 Prank-Kids Lampsies, 2 Water Enchantress of the Temple, 2 Prank-Kids Rocksies, 1 Wandering Gryphon Rider, 1 Nibiru the Primal Being, 1 Foolish Burial, 1 Thunder Dragon Fusion, 2 Rite of Aramesir, 1 Dracoback the Rideable Dragon, 1 Prank-Kids Place, aka Pranktopolis, as I like to refer to it, 1 Prank-Kids Pranks, 1 Fateful Adventure, 2 Call by the Grave, 2 Prank-Kids Pandemonium, 3 Crossout Designator, 3 Forbidden Droplet, and then 1 Infinite Impermanence. Oh, extra side note, one minor change that I kind of consider that you could make is actually playing 2 Droplet and playing 2 Imperm, the Imperm being a really, really good hand trap right now, but I do really like having 3 Droplet in this format. In any case, let's move on to the extra deck now, which has 1 Prank-Kids Rocket Ride, 1 Prank-Kids Weather Washer, 1 Prank-Kids Battle Butler, 1 Totally Awesome, 1 Link Spider, 3 Prank-Kids Meow-Meow-Mu, 2 Prank-Kids Dodo-Doodle-Doo, 1 Prank-Kids Bow Wow Bark, 1 Predaplant Vert Anaconda, 1 Nightmare Unicorn, 1 Prank-Kids Rip Roar and Roaster, and then finally 1 Access Code Talker. Okay, so let's see. I always like to, go over the build and make sure I've covered everything I wanted to, and I believe I have here. Yes, all right. So, yeah, all right. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into some gameplay. Okay, first game here that we're gonna watch is going to be against flowandereeze. So, this is going to be a pretty good example of how to kind of set up the Prank-Kids line. A little bit weird setup for the adventure line. We'll talk about that here in a moment. As you can see, we do open a couple of Prank-Kids monsters as well as the, well, 2-drop, not really that great to open. And we open an adventure, which of the adventure cards, this can get you kind of started, but won't end you on the Wandering Gryphon Rider by itself. So we'll show like a little bit of a minor setup with this, and then we'll go into the Prank-Kids setup. Alright, so to start off, we'll activate the adventure, then we'll use the effects to add the water Enchantress, and then just send the water Enchantress. Now, those of you who saw the Adventure Prank-Kids build, or have played any amount of it, or not Adventure Prank-Kids, Adventure Phantom Night video, or have played against the amount of Adventure, know that typically you start with the Enchantress to banish for the right to get the token, and then you use the Fateful Adventure to get the Gryphon. But if you do just open the Fateful Adventure, you can still just activate it, add, and then send the water Enchantress, and then you can still at least get the right token, or the adventure token off Rite of Aramesir, I mean, as well as the Dracoback setup. Again, we'll set up everything but the Wandering Gryphon Rider here, which again is the most important part, but all the same. So now we'll go into our Prank-Kids line. We'll start by normal summoning any Prank-Kids monster. In our case, it'll be Lampsies. We'll then go into Meow-Meow-Mu. That will activate Prank-Kids Lampsies. We'll summon Fansies. You typically want to go into Fansies as early into the combo line as possible. If it's not the one you normal summon, then it's the one you want to go into first. So we'll link those into Doodle-Doodle-Doo. Now we can activate Fansies and Doodle-Doodle-Doo, chain blocking Fansies ideally, but it doesn't seem like our opponent has an Ash here anyway. We'll add the Prank-Kids Pranks, and then we'll send to Pandemonium with Fansies before summoning the Dropsies from our deck. Now we can use Doodle-Doodle-Doo to add that Pandemonium and the Fansies back to our hand. We'll then activate Pranks, discard the Fansies to summon the token. Oh, sorry, I'm getting a little ahead of myself here. I didn't want you to think I was desynced. No, yeah, there we go. Now we'll summon the token, and now we're going to link those into our second Doodle-Doodle-Doo. It is important to go into this first before the Bow Wow Bark to ensure that we're able to trigger all 4 of our Prank-Kids monsters, as we'll now use Dropsies to go into Rocksies. Now we can link those into Bow Wow Bark, because now we can use Rocksies to get out Fansies from the deck. And then basically the idea is that we're going to use Bow Wow Bark's effect during the draw phase in order to add the Lampsies, and, well, we already have a Dropsies in hand, but if we didn't have a Dropsies in hand, we'd add back another Dropsies, or the other Dropsies rather, and then we can fuse the Fansies on board, Lampsies in hand, and Dropsies in hand into the Battle Butler. So that is kind of the standard 1-card Prank-Kids combo line right there. And again, if we'd actually opened the Rite or the Water Enchantress, we'd have a Gryphon Rider here as well. So, okay, this is actually a pretty important interaction to note, and not only that I want to show this game because we did a clean, well, relatively clean turn 1 combo line, but I get to show off this interaction here. So first thing my opponent does is activate Dimensional Fissure. At this point, I know they're either stun or flowandereeze, probably flowandereeze given the how new the deck is. In any case here, I want to activate Pandemonium right away in response, because the Prank-Kids can only get their effect to summon another Prank-Kids monster if they're sent to the graveyard. Now you might be wondering, well, Dimensional Fissure is a continuous spell and it's already on the board, so aren't they just going to get banished anyway? They're actually not. They're going to go to the graveyard, because as you can see by this little chain icon here, this is still on like the chain link, right? This is still chain link 1 and this is chain link 2. That means Dimensional Fissure has not resolved yet, even though it's a continuous spell and is faced upon the field. Because it is not yet resolved, its effect is not yet applying. So that's why I want to activate Pandemonium as chain link 2 right now in order to make sure these get in the graveyard and their effects can activate. So I not only get the Battle Butler, but then I can also summon 3 Prank-Kids monsters from my deck. And because we tributed Bow Wow Bark during the draw phase, they're not going to be able to be destroyed by card effects, which isn't super relevant against flowandereeze, but is always a very, very nice bonus all the same. So it's still very relevant. Like, it's come up in quite a few matchups, to be sure. And Prank-Kids are actually pretty uniquely good against flowandereeze because Battle Butler is able to board wipe their summons before they get a chance to tribute summon, right? Well, not always before. You basically, as long as you're doing it when the bird's effect is resolving, when it's on the chain link. You can't let it resolve and then do it, because they get the normal summon immediately after the effect resolves. So basically, once your opponent summons their second bird and activates the effect, that's when you want to battle Butler and blow up both of their birds. We'll see actually another example, because we have another game later we're going to play against flowandereeze where this comes up a bit more, and I'll talk about it more there. But in any case, our opponent does have a map and an eagle. Actually, I think it's going to come up in this game too. Yeah, they're going to use Eaglin and then get the Rabina here. I do have the droplet for the Eaglin, which is very nice. Other nice thing about the Adventure Engine is that you can send Draco back for things like Droplet and DPE. We talked about this again a little bit in the Adventure Phantom Knight deck, but we're doing it here too, right? Where I'm going to send the Draco back with the Droplet in order to negate this Eaglin, but the Draco back's just going to equip to the token again right away, so it's kind of like it didn't even have a cost at all. Very, very nice indeed. Opponent tries to call by the Meow-Meow-Mu, but we can just chain Battle Butler's effect. I'm fine doing that anyway, because I wanted to do it at some point. Because that's another thing I wanted to talk about with this game specifically. So I should have pointed it out, because I did note in the actual game that when our opponent duality, they ended up adding the flowandereeze and unexpected wins. So I was waiting to Battle Butler here for when they activated this card, because if they have one bird out and this card, they contribute one of our cards in order to summon a level 7 or higher bird. And we can't respond to that, because that's going to be like a kaiju type effect. So I have to use my Battle Butler like when they activate this card initially. Basically, I just have to keep one bird off of their field. As long as they don't have a bird on the field, they can't use this to kaiju one of my cards away for one of their monsters. So, but here with them threatening to banish the Meow-Meow-Mu with the call by, I'll just go ahead and do it early. So I wanted to get rid of this Eagle at some point anyway, so I'm not too fussed about having to do it now. So here's the unexpected win. So now that they've normal summoned a bird, now I immediately want to activate Battle Butler's effect in order to prevent them from summoning a level 7 or higher bird, which could be the last card in their hand, and also from using the unexplored winds to do so. I'm totally fine with them using the Eaglin here and getting the search. They're not going to get to add with the Eaglin anyway. And with the Rabina search, there's not really any one thing they can add that's going to scare me too much. Like, yeah, a token, like, yeah, they'll get their Rabina back, or I guess they do have the Stree end up being their last card, but this basically just confirms that they don't have access to a level 7 or higher bird this turn, because I negated the Eaglin. So I'm really not too concerned by what they're doing here. Yeah, they can see it as they realize they don't get to search there. And with 3 Prank-Kids monsters on our board, we have far more than enough ammunition in order to then win on the next turn. So, okay, cool. Let's go ahead and take a look at the next game. Okay, so this game is going to be against Altergeist, although this is a pretty interesting variant. This Altergeist is actually playing a Scythe Lock. It didn't come up during the actual game, but it's just interesting to look at the list. So I might have to do a little bit of research into that. Okay, so the opponent's going to go first here. We fortunately do open at the very least in Ash, and then as you can see with the Meow-Meow-Mu, it's pretty apparent what they're up to right off the bat. They're going to try to search their multi-faker here, so I'm definitely going to Ash this Meow-Meow-Mu effect. The only other effect that I would really want to ash against Altergeist anyway is like the, well, the personal spoofing maybe, but the extravagance, but obviously they don't have the extravagance because they already started their main phase 1, so they only have one back row. That's pretty good news for me. I've got an excess of Prank-Kids cards in hand, but with opening Pandemonium, that's not always a bad thing. I'll definitely lead by using Foolish on the Water Enchantress, and here we're going to see a more typical adventure setup, right? Where now I'm using the Rite of Aramesir. Opponent's going to Maxx C, but it's turn 2, and I've got more than enough resources to go for lethal here, so I'm just going to go for it. Plus, I can actually get the Wandering Gryphon Rider out while only giving them 2 draws in the process, including that 1 from the token. So, yep, I'll normal summon the Fansies while Adventure is out. That's going to let me add the Draco back to hand. And again, that's actually something really, really important when you're using the Adventure Engine, right? Is to discard the Draco back when you're searching for the Gryphon Rider to maximize your efficiency, unless you have something that you want to discard for your combo line. But Prank-Kids are not graveyard reliant in that way, so we don't want to be doing that here. So yeah, again, we'll use the right, summon the token, activate the Fateful Adventure, but not activate the Fateful Adventure effect right away. First, I want to normal summon Fansies to add the Draco back to my hand. Now again, when it asks you equip now, you want to click no, because that will put it into your hand and not onto the field. Then, after the Draco back is in your hand, you can activate Fateful Adventure, add the Gryphon Rider like I did, and then discard the Draco back, and then you can equip it here, and basically just get the Gryphon Search for free without having to really pay a real cost. So, opponent's going to flip up Personal Spoofing to search the multi-faker here, but they don't have any other back rows, so that's really not a concern to me in the slightest. I am still under Maxx, but I am planning on ending the game pretty soon here, within a couple of summons. That's the other nice thing about the Adventure Engine, is like, it's kind of the other absurd thing about the Adventure Engine, really, is like, it's not just a free Omni Negate. As we can see going to turn 2 here, it's also a free just like 4k damage, and a bounce too. So it'll clear out I mean, that comes up quite a bit, using the Dracoback to clear out monsters out of the way and just push for lethal. And that is actually exactly what we're going to be doing here. As we go into Dodo-Dodo-Do, I'll then kind of divert here from like the regular combo line. Well, the opponent Ash Blossomed the Dodo-Dodo-Do anyway, so we're not going to be able to get the pranks necessarily. I will chain Pandemonium here, just to kind of throw it out, I guess, before they get more Maxx draws. Although I guess that didn't really matter now that I think about it. They weren't going to get any draws before I summon this anyway. Well, in any case, I've put 8,000 damage on the board. Now I'm just going to use my Dracoback to bounce this Elite Karibo, get it out of the way, and then just smack my opponent for lethal. And my opponent realizes that as soon as I bounce it and they concede. So, yeah, that kind of shows like more of a standard adventure part of the line. But then we kind of diverted a bit for the Prank-Kids part as we went for a game while we were under Maxx. Not doing anything excessive or unnecessary, because while we could have used Gryphon Rider to negate the Nibiru, then obviously we wouldn't have had 8,000 damage on the board. So yeah, that's what I was going to say, just or what I said rather, was the other ridiculous part of the Adventure Engine is that it also just puts 4,000 damage on the board, which makes it, you know, twice as easy in that regard to just OTK the opponent like that. So, all right, let's go ahead and take a look at now at the next game. Okay, so here is that other game against flowandereeze that I mentioned, and in this one especially, we're going to see how you can use Battle Butler in this particular matchup to keep your opponent's little birds off the field and then keep them from being able to make any real plays of substance. So, looking at my hand here, this hand's obviously amazing. Well, it could be better actually. It could have a Crossout or a Call By. Would make it better, as opposed to maybe like a Droplet, but we'll still take it. They got the Maxx, but we have the Ash in response. Well, actually not instead of Droplet. We could do it instead of either Pranks or Pandemonium. You definitely don't need to open both of these, as we'll see shortly. But in any case, still a very nice opening hand. Cannot complain about it. We're going to lead with the Lampsies into the Meow-Meow-Mu. This is another kind of one-card combo line, although, again, because we already opened Pranks and Pandemonium, we don't really have to go out of our way to grab those here. We can just use Dodo-Dodo-Do to add the Prank-Kids place, just because, you know, we can have it, why not? And then we'll use Fansies just to send the other Pandemonium, just because, again, why not? See, that's kind of why I say, like, you really only need one Pandemonium, but having two is still kind of nice. I mean, in this particular situation, the second doesn't do anything, but in longer, kind of grindier games, it's definitely better, or it can be better to have the second Pandemonium. In any case, yeah, so we'll use the Dodo-Dodo-Do to get back some cards, and the Pranks to make the token, and now we're making the second Dodo-Dodo-Do, getting the Rocksies, and now we go into the Bow Wow Bark. Again, just doing all the same things that we covered in that first game against flowandereeze there. We'll get rid of the extra Pandemonium with the Rocksies here, because it's, you know, we don't need it. Drawing the Maxx is very, very nice. We now have the Droplet and the C as disruption, of course. I didn't know I was playing against flows, but yeah, C obviously not doing a whole lot against flowandereeze. See, what's just FLOO? When I think of it that way, I want to call it flows, but it's flu. It's still flowandereeze. So if I ever say flows, that's what I mean. I'm sure you know what I mean, but yeah, we're going to use the Bow Wow Bark during the draw phase there, and of course the Pandemonium in response to the Lightning Storm. I do kind of like using the Bow Wow Bark during the draw phase just to ensure it doesn't get like Kaiju'd or something. And then the Pandemonium, though, you have to wait until the draw phase to use that, or wait until the main phase rather. So yeah, we lose our back rows, but it's actually not that big of a deal, all things considered. The only thing we really lost of like true substance there was, well, the Pranks actually was of true substance, but that and the face down Droplet. We still get the Battle Butler off, and then of course that means we'll also still get to summon 3 Prank-Kids monsters. Now, since I have 2 Dropsies in my deck, I am going to summon 2 Dropsies here. And the reason that you want to do that is to potentially go into Totally Awesome to set up an Omni Negate before you make your plays on the next turn, which will actually be fairly relevant here. The Totally Awesome is a fairly niche extra deck slot that doesn't come up too much, but when it does come up, it can be quite handy. Anyway, the opponent is doing the Map plus Eaglin play. They're going for Stree instead of Rabina here. presumably to hit my Meow-Meow-Mu, but as we saw with the call by in that other game, that doesn't really pose that big of a threat. I was going to actually use the Battle Butler and Meow-Meow-Mu here anyway, so getting this tree and trying to cut me off here doesn't really do anything at all, to be totally honest. So yeah, like I mentioned in that other game against Flues, the main thing you want to be doing here is what I'm doing here, is keeping the little birds off their board, because they can't continue their plays if they can't tribute their little birds away for the bigger ones. Now here my opponent still has their normal summon for turn. If we click this little eye, you see that they got the little, looks like that little whirlwind icon right here. It's got a 1 next to it. That's actually the indicator for your normal summon for turn, which a few people in the comments have actually told me about. Thank you very much to those who have told me about that. But they still have their normal summon for turn because they summoned the Eaglin off of the map, so they will still be able to make plays here. And they've actually got a Rabina, which you know, is kind of, I want to say it's the worst case scenario, but it's actually not even that bad because we can still just use Battle Butler again. It might seem weird to just be using Battle Butler against little birds like this, but again, we're doing this to keep the flowandereeze player from being able to really do anything at all here. As you can see, even though I have to tribute the Battle Butler now, I will still gladly do that to destroy the Rabina and the token here. And yeah, they're going to get another normal summon, and yeah, they're going to add the little birds back. But by this point, I pretty much know all but one card in their hand, right? They have, well, they just summoned the Stree. Now they're going to have the Eaglin, the Empan, the Rabina, the token, and one unknown. So really they only have one unknown card that I have to contend with against here. And yeah, it could be a hand trap, and I am going to play cautiously to play around that. But as you can see, yeah, the opponent has to go to the end phase. Again, might have seemed a bit weird to use Battle Butler like that, but definitely not a poor use of Battle Butler. So as I mentioned, I'm going to go into Totally Awesome right off the bat here. Honestly, I kind of actually debated this play because it really wasn't that necessary. Given that my opponent only had the one card and they didn't use it to stop my plays last turn, sure, they could have top decked a hand trap, and that is ultimately kind of the hedge that I'm playing around here, because I figured a way to get lethal even while making Totally Awesome. But I did definitely consider it's definitely not necessary here, I will say that much. So all the same though, like I said, I did figure a way to get lethal with the Totally Awesome. It's going to involve making access code, so we'll make the Totally Awesome and then use the Fansies to go into Meow-Meow-Mu. That will allow us to, this actually cut it close here. I didn't realize when I made this play how few Prank-Kids I had left in deck. It's just that Rocksies, that Lampsies, and then one more Fansies. So I had like literally barely enough Prank-Kids left in order to be able to make this play. So it was I did cut it a little bit close here. Yeah, so like I said, I'm just going to end up climbing into Access Code Talker here, but the main thing that I had to play around was this Magnificent Map, right? Because the Magnificent Map has this other effect where if I normal summon, they're going to get to normal summon a floowandereeze monster, and I can't, I mean, yeah, I could negate with Totally Awesome, but then I couldn't go for lethal. So before I normal summon, I want to get this map off the board, so I'm going to go for the Nightmare Unicorn here. I'll pitch this Nibiru, get rid of it. Now I can normal summon the Maxx, and then just go into Access Code Talker, and then that's going to be more than enough damage with the Totally Awesome to go for lethal, as my opponent realizes here. So yeah, just a nice little play. I liked this game too because it gets to show off some of the extra deck stuff that we don't use as much. Like I almost, it's very, very rare that I go into Totally Awesome, Nightmare Unicorn, or Access Code Talker. But this game shows in grindier situations how those cards are still very, very useful in the extra deck and not to be underestimated. So, all right, let's go ahead and take a look at the next game now. So this game here is going to be against Adventure Virtual World. Ed Virtual World? I think that's what I'm going to start calling it, Ed Virtual World. Which is actually a deck I do plan on covering relatively soon here. Not sure exactly what at this point. I'm still trying to figure out the order I want to cover, because I still have like, I don't think we're even, well, what is this, the fourth one? I think we're about or coming up to the halfway point, the halfway point of new decks I want to show off with this update. So yeah, definitely good stuff here. So unfortunately, the opponent has the Ash Blossom against the Lampsies here, and as a result of me not having Call By or Crossout, I'm not able to continue my plays. So I'm just going to set Droplet and pass here. If I end up using Droplet, I'll probably just send the Draco back. Well, I don't know, actually. I was kind of debating this in the actual game too. Yeah, I do think Draco back is probably just the best thing to send, but we are playing against Virtual World, so the uses of Droplet against that are going to be relatively limited. As we've discussed in the past, you know, Virtual World tends not to be hurt by disruption that negates onboard effects. We do have the Maxx, however, and it actually is going to resolve here. That is excellent disruption against Virtual World, as they are not able to really make, they're barely able to make significant plays without giving the opponent like at least 3 draws, if not much more than that. And let's see, what did we draw off that? Is it the Rocksies we just drew? Yeah, we drew Rocksies. Okay, so it is nice to get another Prank-Kids monster so that we're able to continue our plays for the next turn. Our opponent does set 1 back row and stop. That is pretty good news for me, as is drawing the Foolish Burial here. So I'll use Foolish Burial's effect to send the Water Enchantress. Now we can use Water Enchantress to banish and do our good old adventure line stuff of adding Rite of Aramesir, using that to get our token, and then the Fateful Adventure. And we already have the Draker back, so we can actually just activate the adventure effect right away in order to add the Gryphon, or we would if our opponent did not have Virtual World Gate Chuchi here, which is going to destroy the adventure, and as a result of the card not being on the field as it's resolving, we're not going to get the search. That's still actually fine with me though, because at the very least now they can't use the Chuchi against my Prank Kid, which will allow me to go into a proper Prank Kid line here. Yeah, at this point I'll just banish the Draco back. I actually maybe should have thought about banishing the Pandemonium, because I could have added another one a little bit later anyway. Ooh, I actually just now thought about that. Oh, you know what? So, I wanted to show this game because I do actually end up... Well, I actually end up making a bit of a misplay, and I know what that misplay is, but I kind of also just wanted to see if there was another way I could have ended the game a little bit sooner here, and I wonder if I had kept the Draco back, if that would have been the case. If I could have gone for lethal. I think I could have, especially if I'm adding place like this. Okay, if I had bounced and then fused. Well, I'm fusing right now anyway. No, that's the pranks. Never mind. Okay, now I'm just like talking to myself at this point. But let's see. 3, 2, 7. That would have been 7,000. With the Lampsies burn would have been 5. Oh, that would have been 500 short. Oh, and I could have specialed the Water Enchant. I think I could have actually just gone for lethal here if I hadn't discarded the Draco back, right? Well, no, I wouldn't have been able to search the place because I would have had to search the Pandemonium. So I think I would have been 1,000 short. I don't know. People who are better than me with the deck and math in general in the comments should definitely let me know. Because I kind of just ended up doing a standard Prank-Kids line here, but I definitely should have been thinking more out of the box. I should have thought more about the fact that I was actually able to attack and potentially go for lethal. Okay. Yeah, I feel like I could have gotten lethal if I hadn't banished the Draco back there. Okay, so here's where I make the misplay, and yeah, you can see where it is. By banishing Meow-Meow-Mu to use Bow Wow Bark's effect, it was really just a misclick on my part, but that is something that is very, 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 very important to do. When you're activating Bow Wow Bark's effect, you have to click no when it asks you if you want to use Prank-Kids Meow-Meow-Mu's effect, because that's going to leave your Bow Wow Bark on the board, and more importantly, that's going to mean that you can't use Meow-Meow-Mu with Battle Butler later in the turn, and that is definitely going to come up here. As the opponent activates Rite of Aramesir, I'm just going to go ahead and use my Prank-Kids Pandemonium now. And now I'm stuck in an awkward spot where I kind of have to use my one Battle Butler activation a lot earlier than I want to. Otherwise, they'll set up the Wandering Gryphon Rider. And I don't know for sure that they have other Virtual cards in their hand. I think maybe I do, actually. Oh, wait, no, I don't. Maybe I do. I don't know. But, in any case here, I kind of just have to hope that they're not going to have other plays, but I'm ultimately, we know that they're going to, so. Yeah, definitely, it definitely stings when you misclick, definitely, but it happens, and I think a lot of people, especially in Diamond 1, right, would have just snap conceded right there. They'd have been like, oh, well, it's Diamond 1, I'm not going to lose rank, let's just concede and move on, I misclicked, whatever, blah, 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 but, I don't know. I still like to see, because what if this had happened while you were climbing ladder? Well, then you wouldn't have snap conceded, right? I feel like it's important to get the practice in to figure out how you will play out of these various scenarios. Because, and if you play in real life in the TCG or OCG, well, I mean, you won't misclick IRL, but. But it's still, I think, important to play through misplays because, IRL, you don't scoop so easily, and you would want to play through a misplay anyway, so it's definitely important to get the practice in while doing that. Now things are looking a little bit bleak here as the opponent is comboing off, and if I'd had another Battle Butler activation, I could definitely be using it right now to stop my opponent from making plays. So yeah, but that being the case, you know, we do have a droplet, so honestly, if I can draw, well, Imperm is my one trap card, but if I do draw Imperm, that is actually an out. Even though you might be like, well, wait, you can't activate Imperm if you have other cards in the field, though, right? But if we send Imperm with Droplet, then as well as a monster, then they can't respond with VFD or Choo-Chee's effects. So, or like any monster effect or Choo-Chee. So we do actually technically still have the out here, which is why I haven't conceded yet. So it's really gonna kind of come down to just drawing it. I don't know. You just gotta draw the out, right? That's the advice everybody likes to give, but you know, it definitely pays to hold out and see if you draw the out like this, definitely. Alright, yep, opponent is going into their second level 9 here, setting up the very, very, very fun dragon there, as they then overlay into VFD. Which, if I recall correctly, actually is like the OCG name, because it stands for the other True King level 9 monsters. Like, it's their initials all put together, but just a little fun fact, I guess, there. Yeah, opponent has the Choo-Chee here, and because I didn't draw a trap, the droplet doesn't really do anything by itself. I actually probably should have still activated it, now that I think about it, because it would have actually gotten the VFD in the graveyard. Huh, I didn't think about that either, so that was, I guess, another slight misplay I made, but, yeah, I don't know. I've said it before in the past. I'm definitely not opposed to showing games where I'm making little misplays like this. Well, I guess not little. I mean, there've been major misplays that have ultimately cost me the game. But it's not only just to show the value of playing through misplays, but usually if there's a game that you lose because you misplayed, you probably didn't make just one misplay. There probably were multiple points, like I observed earlier in the game, where I could have potentially played a little bit differently to secure a better route where I wouldn't have then misplayed. So, yeah, that's why I just think there's value in not only just going back and watching your own games just to find out information, but then sharing my own, but then sharing games as well, where we can just show how, like, again, maybe minor differences in play, because it really is all it takes is a minor difference in play. Just showing these games where a minor difference in play will really make all the difference. So it's all in line with constantly improving and all that fun stuff, which is the ultimate goal for me personally as a player, and then for the channel as well, to not only help myself improve, but then ideally to help you all improve as a result as well. So alright, I'll get off my soapbox now and see if we top deck maybe one last out here. We ultimately don't, so we'll just go ahead and end up conceding. So, yeah, again, we lost there, but it could have pretty easily been a victory had we just played a little bit differently. So, alright, I think that's all the time we've got for this one, so let's go ahead and jump straight into the outro. Okay, everybody, I want to thank you very much for watching to the very end of the video like this. That means a lot to not only me personally, but also it's an excellent way to support the channel as well, so I very much appreciate that on two fronts. And I'm also appreciative to those of you who are commenting and subscribing, as those are also excellent ways to support the channel. Commenters, I say it all the time, especially nowadays, with so many new decks, you know, that I'm trying out. But if you ever have any suggestions for my builds or gameplay wise, alternative combo lines, maybe just, you know, tips in general, I'm very, very open and very receptive to those. I always welcome constructive criticism and feedback, as I think it is a very important part of the process. So I'm very much looking forward to hearing from you in the comments below. And then, yeah, subscribing again, like I said, a good way to support the channel, and then you'll also get notified when my videos release, which does happen every single day. So if you subscribe, you get one daily Master Duel video from yours truly. But in any case, that's all the time I've got for now. So without further ado, this is XLex signing out. I hope you guys have a fantastic day.